Good morning to all of you, precious ones, on this very tender morning. It says in Ecclesiastes that there's a time to grieve. And I think it's so important to grieve together this morning. I think it's totally part of embodiment of our teaching series, even though I've changed the text, jumped out of John for a moment, but we looked at Paul's breathtaking view of embodiment this morning in that text that Shalisha has just read to us. And I'm just reading out of my journal this morning. It's not as you can probably understand, not a overly prepared presentation. But I guess on my prayer walk this morning, I was just so aware of the larger grief. You know, we're now in a place as a church. It's okay, you can be on. I was trying to do a Matt and Sandra thing where we could be together, but Kathleen's going to help me in a few minutes. But I was just aware of the larger grief, the larger. We're now in this place as a church that many have had to experience, where they've experienced grief in COVID, with the restrictions and limitations of being able to be physically together. We've for the most part, escaped that, but here we are, and it's hard. It's painful not to be together, not to be together with Nathan and Kate. And of course, there's the larger. I've been weeping all week before I got the call from Nathan and Kate on Friday. That I've been weeping all week over Lytton and listening to the stories and the devastation. And just heard another one this morning in what's happening with the wildfire, what happened with the wildfire and continues in our province. And of course, the ongoing discovery of the remains of Indigenous children at residential school sites. So it's just been a month of grief. And the Bible tells us there is a time to grieve. And Paul is clear in this passage that when one suffers, we all suffer. It doesn't say we should, it says we do. And I think we live in a culture where sometimes we don't stop for that. I'm reading a book called Slow Church right now, and it's based on the slow food movement that came in reaction in Europe to the fast food movement, and it's taking it into the church. And I think it's so powerful and timely. And in our culture, we're moving so fast that we don't know how to stop. We don't know how to slow down. And that's critically important for grieving, to pay attention to our grief, to tend to it. Otherwise, we end up suppressing it with busyness or medicating it with substances or other addictions. But just to give a brief chronology for everybody to bring you up to speed, and Joanna already gave you the announcement from this morning, but on Friday morning, I got a call from Nathan and Kate, an urgent call, and Kate was on the phone. She was crying, and they were on the way to the hospital saying that they'd lost the baby's heartbeat. But at that point, they were still waiting for a miracle. And through the day, they stayed in touch, and we were praying, but we got the news that devastatingly, it was confirmed that the baby had passed away. And so yesterday morning, again, interacted with Kate, and she was inquiring because, as you know, she was to teach today, and I'd already released her from that at the first phone call on the Friday and said, hey, we just want to, we'll carry you in this, don't worry. And yesterday she inquired about what we were going to do for the teaching. And all I could say to her is, I said, I've taken responsibility for it, but all I feel is we're just supposed to hold you. We're supposed to hold you in this time. And at that point, because the schedule was kind of adjusting, they weren't sure when the induction was going to occur, and they were actually hoping to be on with us today. I couldn't believe it. And of course I said there's no pressure, but no, they really wanted to be with their community to grieve together. But then the induction was delayed till 3 o'clock, and then it took a long time. And finally this morning, as Joanna announced, the little baby boy was born. So they were kept in overnight, and it was just too much. But Kate had immediately sent me a lament song, a lament prayer rather, that had really ministered to her. And I asked her if she'd mind if we shared that as a church. And of course that meant a lot to her. But when we found out they couldn't be here, I said, well, listen, I want you to be with us when we read this prayer that means so much to you. What I loved about the prayer is that it expresses her grief as a bereaved mom, but also, and as bereaved parents, but also the grief of their community and those that are grieving with them. It's very, very beautiful. So as you can see, I was a little bit not sure what to do, even late yesterday as the day rolled on. And so when it was confirmed that Nathan and Kate couldn't be with us today, I felt that we still needed to hold this space, but because we're grieving as a community, we're to varying degrees of knowing them, we share this grief, but as Paul said, it's a reality for all of us. And so what I wanted to do was to just stop and to grieve together as a body and as a family, and asking the Lord how to do that. And the first, of course, is to stop. And I've mentioned the busyness and the challenge of our culture to do that. But the second is to name our pain. To express it in the presence of God is called lament. And this can happen through prayer, through words, through art, through song. Half the Psalms, as I've taught before, are lament songs. That means they're song expressions of anger, fear, grief, rage, as worship. That's the thing. What I love about the Psalms is they don't say, okay, well, this is praise and worship and this is crying. No, it's all worship. And God, it seems, considers it important that we regard this as an act of worship in God's presence today. And it seems to have been so important in Israel that there's a whole book called Crying in the Old Testament, in the wisdom literature, Lamentations, written by Jeremiah over the fall of Jerusalem, but has been used by many, and we read from it this morning as a very helpful expression of pain. And David, when his best friend Jonathan died, along with Saul, the king, David actually wrote a song, and it says he taught the people of Israel to sing this lament song, and they wailed, they cried, and that's what I love about Eastern cultures and Middle Eastern culture and indigenous culture. I've watched them smudging and sweetgrass and the sweats, and these are acts of lament, acts of expressing pain that the Creator has given as good gifts. And we can learn from these ways, these cultures, because we've lost that in our addiction to speed in our Western culture, and even in the church. The show must go on. We don't know how to stop. And so the third thing is, first is to stop, second to name our pain through lament, and the third is, of course, we want to be helpful to Nathan and Kate. We want to serve them, and sometimes our help can be not helpful. So it's so important not to become Job's comforters, not to get too anxious to try to fix or help, so it's just important to be a loving presence, to be attentive and watchful, and we're doing that in every way we can. And the book of Job was given to us, I think, as instruction for this. Job never finds out why all that calamity happened to him. Did you realize that? God never explains to him that he was somehow the victim of some crazy cosmic bet. Like Job doesn't know any of that, and it's never explained to him at the end. All we know is that the Satan, which what's the English word for the Satan? That it's used as a my brain's not working, but it's not just Satan. It's not a proper name. In Job, he's called the Satan, which means the accuser. So the accuser comes, and for the first 3 chapters, he accuses Job to God. And then a lot of people think Satan, the accuser, disappears. You don't see him anymore, but he actually shows up in Job's friends. So we don't want that to happen. We want, what they should have done is they should have kept doing what they started. And that was they just were quiet and they were with Job in his suffering and silence and suffering with him. And they should have just stayed there. If they just stuck with that, they'd done okay. But they came, they began to become what we call Job's comforters. And so all true help comes from being a loving, attentive, prayerful presence. And I was wondering how we could lament as a church, because like David, I didn't have time to write out a lament, and I didn't want to share Kate's prayer that she had found without her with us and Nathan. And so I was asking the Lord what to do. And because God's promise to us is, blessed are those who lament. We need to lament. And there's a promise that there's comfort that comes through lament. Blessed are those who mourn, Jesus said, for they will be comforted. But I think that mourning is an action. I think it's a verb. I think it's something we intentionally do to express our pain. And I think the answer came from me. I'm taking a bit of a risk here, but I think the answer came from me a few weeks ago. You know how Apple and Spotify, they have these playlists that are themes that you can set. And I had this playlist, it was acoustic, I think it was called Acoustic Chill on Apple. And there was this song about 2 or 3 weeks ago that started catching my attention. And it sounded so shallow on one end because the words were, it's okay, it's okay. And I was thinking, well, it's not okay, you know, but why is this song grabbing me? And what I've found out over the last 2 days, this song has come as a remarkable grace to me, is that this artist was unknown, basically. Now she's gone viral around the world, but she was unknown until mid-June. So we're talking 2 or 3 weeks ago. And she appeared on America's Got Talent. And she said the song was the story of her past year. So before I present the song, I'd like to read from her blog, which I think to me is one of the most articulate forms of lament that I have ever read in my life. And I'm going to share a screen here, and Kathleen's going to help me do this. And we're going to just take turns reading the slide. And I'd like you to just, as we read through this blog, it's an artist called Nightbirde. And this is her blog from March the 9th, 2021. And I want you to allow the lament, regardless of where you are and what pain and what triggers and anguish you're feeling in your own life and for Nathan and Kate, just to allow these words to wash over you. This is a blog called God is on the Bathroom Floor. So I'll start. She writes, I don't remember most of autumn because I lost my mind late in the summer. And for a long time after that, I wasn't in my body. I was a light bulb buzzing somewhere far.
After the doctor told me I was dying, and after the man I married said he didn't love me anymore, I chased a miracle in California. And 16 weeks later, I got it. The cancer was gone. But when my brain caught up with it all, something broke. I later found out that all the tragedy at once had caused a physical head trauma, and my brain was sending false signals of excruciating pain and panic.
I spent 3 months propped against the wall. On nights that I could not sleep, I laid in the tub like an insect, staring at my reflection in the shower knob. I vomited until I was hollow. I rolled up under my robe on the tile. The bathroom floor became my place to hide, where I could scream and be ugly, where I could sob and spit and eventually doze off, happy to be asleep, even with my head on the toilet.
I've had cancer 3 times now, and I have barely passed 30. There are times when I wonder what I must have done to deserve such a story. I fear sometimes that when I die and meet with God, that he will say I disappointed him, or offended him, or failed him. Maybe he'll say I just never learned the lesson, or that I wasn't grateful enough. But one thing I know for sure is this: he can never say that he did not know me.
I am God's downstairs neighbor, banging on the ceiling with a broomstick. I show up at his door every day, sometimes with songs, sometimes with curses, sometimes apologies, gifts, questions, demands. Sometimes I use my key under the mat to let myself in. Other times I sulk outside until he opens the door to me himself.
I have called him a cheat and a liar, and I meant it. I have told him I wanted to die, and I meant it. Tears have become the only prayer I know. Prayers roll over my nostrils and drip down my forearms. They fall to the ground as I reach for him. These are the prayers I repeat night and day, sunrise, sunset.
Call me bitter if you want to. That's fair. Count me among the angry, the cynical, the offended, the hardened. But count me also among the friends of God. For I have seen him in rare form. I have felt his exhale, laid in his shadow, squinted to read the message he wrote for me in the grout. I'm sad too.
If an explanation would help, he would write me one, I know it. But maybe an explanation would only start an argument between us, and I don't want to argue with God. I want to lay in a hammock with him and trace the veins in his arms.
I remind myself that I'm praying to the God who let the Israelites stay lost for decades. They begged to arrive in the promised land, but instead he let them wander, answering prayers they didn't pray. For 40 years, their shoes didn't wear out. Fire lit their path each night. Every morning, he sent them mercy bread from heaven.
I look hard for the answers to the prayers that I didn't pray. I look for the mercy bread that he promised to bake fresh for me each morning. The Israelites called it manna, which means, what is it?
That's the same question I'm asking again and again. There's mercy here somewhere, but what is it? What is it? What is it?
I see mercy in the dusty sunlight that outlines the trees, in my mother's crooked hands, in the blanket my friend left for me, in the harmony of the wind chimes. It's not the mercy that I asked for, but it is mercy nonetheless. And I learn a new prayer. Thank you. It's a prayer I don't mean yet, but will repeat until I do.
Call me cursed, call me lost, call me scorned. But that's not all. Call me chosen, blessed, sought after. Call me the one who God whispers his secrets to. I am the one whose belly is filled with loaves of mercy that were hidden for me.
Even on days when I'm not so sick, sometimes I go lay on the mat in the afternoon light to listen for him. I know it sounds crazy and I can't really explain it, but God is in there even now. I've heard it said that some people can't see God because they won't look low enough, and it's true.
I have heard it said that some people can't see God because they won't look low enough. And it's true. If you can't see him, look lower. God is on the bathroom floor. I want us to just hold that. And of course, I dedicate this lament to our dear sister and brother today, Kate, Nathan, as they grieve, that they will find God in those low places and we with them. And I also dedicate this to our dear sister, Jen, who's been battling stage 4 cancer so unbelievably, heroically. And yesterday, she hosted this event at Salisbury Park. And it was like a little bike festival with ice cream. And there were people from all over the world, Iran, China, Korea, indigenous friends, neighbors. And Kathleen and I were not well yesterday, but we stopped in. We just felt we had to just stop in, and we said hello. And here were some of the images. There was live music, just beautiful instrumentation. I'll try to give you a sample of it in a minute. And
Yes, feel free to take any of the snacks. Yes, we will refill the snacks too.
we had fellow volunteers time all the way from White Rock, I think he was, and fixed dozens and dozens of bikes, serviced them, fixed brake problems, gear problems, grease problems. It was just amazing. And so Jen, we continue to stand with you and celebrate with you. Such a beautiful kingdom victory yesterday. And you embody this tenacity and lament that we've seen in Nightbirde. So I'm taking a bit of a risk here because I wanted to play this song for you, and the only place I could find it where Nightbirde sings it live. There are songs available where you can watch it, a picture, but you don't see her, was actually through America's Got Talent. And last time I played Britain's Got Talent, I think was Paul Potts years ago, and it was a winner, but this is a winner. And I think even though it doesn't seem to fit the time we're in, I think you will understand that there's something about her spirit and her heart that just is so resonating with the grief that we're feeling around the world today. And so I want to offer this as a gift before we go into some more reflection in our breakout. So Tay, I'll stop screen sharing and let you put that on. Thank you for, dear ones, for indulging me in just this one way that God's comfort has been coming to me in the last 48 hours through this amazing story. God is on the bathroom floor. What's your bathroom floor today? I have another video I won't share right now, and I'll wait till our benediction time. And if we have time, I'll share it there. It's just an interview she does 5 to 7 minutes with Chris Cuomo of CNN, and it's just powerful. Basically, that golden buzzer meant she was catapulted into international live shows immediately, and her song has been #1 on iTunes for weeks now. And God has just given her a platform, and her testimony is just so powerful wherever she goes. And it came to us, thank God, very timely, just God's comfort. So I just want you to take 15 minutes and just be together. And, we can follow our normal format for breakouts, just catch up with each other a little bit, or if you just want to hold Nathan and Kate and just lovingly pray for them, the loss of Benjamin, as we commit him to God, and continue to pray for Jen, of course, in her battle, and pray for each other, love each other. We'll take 15 minutes and then we'll come back and give you a few announcements and just some practice, and give you a blessing. God bless you.